Puny gods. Hey everybody, I feel like talking about Marvel some more. I'm still kind of riding the high from Infinity War a bit. And yeah, I want to do my list for the top 10 best MCU, Marvel Cinematic Universe, villains. Now, unlike when I did my ranking of the MCU films, where I did restrict it to just the films and did not incorporate the Netflix or the other TV shows, here, all are welcome. So, open into this are it's not just, it's the movies, it's the TV shows, it's Netflix, all of it. Any villain from anything that is connected to the Marvel Cinematic Universe is eligible for inclusion on this list. So, establishing that there are very few restrictions and ground rules, let's get started with number 10, Ultron from Age of Ultron. Now, this is where I have to point out a praising of the villain is not necessarily a praising of the film. I don't think Age of Ultron is that bad a movie. Honestly, it just doesn't live up to the previous film. And in addition to that, its component parts don't quite fit together. But one of its big strengths is James Spader voicing Ultron. He really does work as this egotistical AI version of Tony Stark, basically, because he's got that same sort of sense of course I'm right, I'm the smartest guy in the room, I know exactly what I'm doing, and being just kind of snarky about it. And you really see that emphasized when he actually faces off with Stark. God, that was a really appropriate Freudian slip against Stark about midway through the movie, and they're practically finishing each other's sentences. But there's also hints of something a little deeper, because he seems genuinely pained when Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver abandoned his cause. And unfortunately, I feel like that was an element that probably was more explored before the film got cut up for the final edit. Because you can tell there are things missing from there. But I still think that the power of the performance really does carry this through. Not above number 10, but I do feel that it warrants placement on the list. Number 9, Ego, the Living Planet, played by Kurt Russell in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This guy is a great villain for a number of reasons. He is, once you get the scope of what it is he's doing on the grand scale in terms of the threat he presents, but also the damage that he has done on a personal level to Peter Quill specifically, then he makes for a wonderfully hateable villain. And they really did do a great job of having him embody his name. Ego. He is so full of himself that he believes nothing else in the universe is worthy to be anything other than converted into just more of him, because he is the greatest thing ever, and everything else in the universe should be like him. And that works really well. It really feeds into a lot of the themes of the film as a whole, in terms of a lot of the family dynamics and relationships that are really at the heart of that film. And his reveal as a villain feels right, and then to see everyone join together to fight him is so cathartic. Just watching them all together, from them flying around, just shooting up the interior bits of the planet, to Quill punching it out with him, to when he first just starts blasting him after he confesses to having killed Quill's mother, to Groot blowing up the brain. I know he's a good villain because I enjoy watching him defeated so much. Number 8, Hela from Thor Ragnarok. This is largely down to the performance, because the character on paper is kinda generic. Goddess of death, secret sibling with a grudge. It's very much in keeping with the kind of overblown operatics that the Thor series has gone for, but it's not particularly deeper than, honestly, the sort of twist that went on with Loki in terms of, he's not even really your brother, he's actually this. It feels very much born out of a similar attempt at overblown family drama. But Cate Blanchett in this part, her sense of untouchability, Like, she really just strolls in with a confidence that makes you think, we really don't have a chance against her, do we? She exudes that, and she lives up to it as well in the action scenes. And that headdress, holy crap. It takes a lot to have a costume and a look that extreme and to not have the performance be buried underneath it. It takes a really strong performer to still shine through that, and she does. Absolutely. And again, her smugness makes it all the more rewarding when she is defeated. Number 7. And I'm going to get heat for this one, but I'm hoping I can explain it in a way that will kind of ease that heat off a little bit. Number 7 is Loki. Now, before you all jump on me, I love Loki. Loki is great, but here's the thing. Loki was really only the flat-out villain twice in the numerous appearances that he's had. And that was original Thor and Avengers, the first one. Appearances since then, Thor, The Dark World, Thor Ragnarok, Infinity War, he is an anti-hero. He's not a good guy, but he's not a villain in the story. He's not an antagonist in the story. He's not something that is impeding the heroes. He's that in the minority of his appearances, 40%. Is he actually the villain? And that's why I'm not going to put him higher, because I actually think a lot of his best stuff was when he was out of villain mode and into anti-hero mode. So this is me judging him as a villain, not as a character. So I'm hoping I get some leeway on that. And the other reason he's not higher is, if I'm being completely honest, in the first Thor, while it did lay all the groundwork we kind of needed to understand where he was coming from and what motivated him as a villain, he's not as much fun. In Avengers, he's fun. He is really embracing and enjoying messing with these guys. He's not just being wicked, he's reveling in it. And that is what makes him so great as a villain. But funnily enough, he doesn't really lose that when he stops being an out-and-out villain. He still revels in mischief. He's just not the big problem they have to deal with in later appearances. But I do like Loki a lot. But when I actually chart him as a character and what I like most about him, his strictly looking at his villain work, this is as high as he gets. Number 6, Ward from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, this was an interesting progression because Ward initially was one of the things I hated about the first season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He was so wooden and so generic, and I'm like, why is this guy even here? Like, he's not nominally a better fighter than someone like May. He doesn't why is he even here? He just seems so generic. And then to have it revealed that he's a traitor, which initially I was very skeptical of, because I had assumed that when we got to the second season and he came back, that inevitably he'd win their trust back, because it looked like he had doubts about what he was doing, and like maybe he was only with Hydra because he was behind and he was loyal to that one guy, and maybe he's not a true believer. And so I was expecting to see him get a redemption arc in the second season, and I knew this guy should not be redeemed for what he did. To the level of betrayal he did to this group, he should not be allowed to be redeemed. But I didn't try and redeem him. Not only did they not try and redeem him, second season, they doubled down on how bad this guy is. He started showing up, and instead of softening and trying to make his betrayal seem not that bad, they just start to peel back the layers that this guy is so much worse than you even thought he was after he betrayed the rest of the team. And I loved it. And it retroactively made his first season stuff way better. It was still painful to watch at the time, and that is still a fault of that first season, but it suddenly makes sense. Of course he was generic. He was playing a part. It was just cover. It was to his benefit to be generic and not really be noticed. So it's just such a fantastic transformation, and then to watch him the way he throws off the shield agents. He's so often a wild card in all of this stuff going on. He's a monkey wrench that gets thrown into everybody's things, pursuing his own stuff. I loved it. And his exit from the series is also a big reason why I bowed out. It's not exclusively that this was the point at which I go, well, I'm done, but my interest level dropped, and then when I fell behind, I didn't feel the motivation to catch up. So in season 3, when they killed him and had a really, really, really super generic, big evil threat walking around with his face, I did not care so hard because Ward was awesome. Okay, now, top 5. Let's go to Wakanda and let's talk Killmonger, played by Michael B. Jordan. So, oh boy, there's a lot to like about Killmonger. So first of all, very much a legitimate threat to T'Challa as a one-on-one combatant, and also the level of knowledge that he has about Wakanda to be able to work the system in order to basically just get in to burn it down, because that's all that he's about. But at the same time, the key to his rage, the key to his anger being very legitimate, between both being a legitimate wrong that was done to him by T'Challa's father, coupled with him having a perspective on Wakanda's isolationism that is not invalid. And so that right off the bat helps a lot. It was also really cool to watch him initially appear to be maybe a high-level henchman, at best kind of a partner with the villain we already knew, with Claw. And for him just to gun the guy down, around halfway through the movie, and then drag his body as his free ticket into Wakanda. Oh yeah, talk about arriving as a villain. Oh, that was good. And again, his rage. Not only is Michael B. Jordan really good at exuding that kind of frustration and anger and channeling it into a performance, but it felt also like that's what the character was doing. Like, the character had a goal, but he seemed to know that rage was his fuel, and it was never too far from him. But he wasn't just shouting and angry and all the time. Like, he had a plan. He had nuances, and he was a fantastic villain. Number 4, the Vulture. Adrian Toomes, played by Michael Keaton in Spider-Man Homecoming. This guy is great for a lot of reasons. First off, this is exactly the kind of Spider-Man villain that I wanted. I actually would say that I've kind of wanted from the beginning. And because I feel like, especially after the very first Spider-Man film, the first Sam Raimi one, they had a tendency to go too big with the villains. So as much as I love Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2, that started a trend of these villains being big citywide threats. And I always liked the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, the guy who's dealing with a criminal who's not big enough to warrant the involvement of any other heroes. And the Vulture is that. Ultimately, he's just an arms dealer. He's an arms dealer with access to some pretty scary stuff, but he's just an arms dealer. The Avengers aren't going to crack down on this guy. And so it falls to Spider-Man. So he is the right scale that I wanted to see Spider-Man take on. And he's also the kind of thing that Spider-Man 3 tried to do with Sandman and failed at, but a guy he doesn't have these big, sinister ambitions. Dude's just trying to make a living. He's doing it illegally, and he deserves to be caught, but he's just in it for the money. Yet at the same time, Michael Keaton playing him, and you never doubt that this guy is dangerous. And that scene in the car, when he is working it out who Peter is, and then turns around to confront him, tell him, "You saved my daughter, I will never forget that, but if you get in the way of my business, that will be the end of you." It's so chillingly played. It is a well-conceived character, well-realized visually. It's an awesome look, and with just a terrific performance by a really well-cast actor. Number 5. Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, as played by Vincent D'Onofrio. Took me a second. I lost it for a moment there. But, oh man. He is a big part of what is so good about that first season of Daredevil. He's not the only thing that's good, but he's one of the big things that's really good. Because first of all, he exudes power. He exudes menace. Just standing there. You just see this guy in the room and you're like, ooh, okay, now I'm nervous. And you should. And the way that he's played and the little bits of nuance, like I love his courtship of and his relationship with Vanessa. To see that and to see that he legitimately cares about her and that he's finding a connection for possibly the first time in his life like that. But at the same time, that does not in any way soften him, and it will never undercut his ruthlessness, because she's not ever going to try and change that part of him. And how just methodical and determined. This is a guy who has risen to power on sheer force of will. And it takes a lot of presence and a lot of, I was going to say charisma, but charisma implies a likability. And I'm not sure that Fisk as a character is charismatic, but the performance is just imbued with so much quiet strength that you buy that through sheer force of will, this guy rose up to become the Kingpin of Hell's Kitchen. It's an astoundingly intimidating performance, and it's amazing. We are getting right up towards the top. These top two, I had a really hard time figuring out the ranking of. And in fact, just before shooting this, I flipped it. And maybe if I came back, maybe if it was another day, maybe if I shot this tomorrow, maybe I would put it back. But today, this is the way I'm going. So, number 2, Thanos. Oh, man. It is no small accomplishment what they did with Thanos. I honestly, I was expecting to like Infinity War. I was excited for Infinity War. But I did honestly think in the back of my head, they are not going to be able to do anything that totally lives up to 6 years worth of buildup since he first appeared at the mid-credits in the first Avengers. Like, it's not possible to live up to that level of anticipation of build. But they did it. And they did it by making the movie about him. Because all the other heroes were already established. So instead we zero in on him. And we understand what it is he's trying to accomplish. Why he thinks it's a good idea. What about is driving him and has galvanized this thinking. And why he is so certain that he's right. And then to see the lengths that he's willing to go to in order to accomplish this. We get a look at a nuanced maniac. Because he is the Mad Titan. What he is doing is insane. But we understand why he's doing it. How many villains can you say that about? How many villains act like in a way that is like, no, that is a crazy person's conclusion. But we understand why they came to that conclusion. And it's not like some stupid contrived like misunderstanding or some crap like that. Like, we know exactly why he thinks this is what has to be done. And it's so good. And Josh Brolin, who's an actor who doesn't really do much for me most of the time, he brings such menace but also pathos to this character. And when something is difficult for him, you see it in the performance through the motion capture that this is a difficult thing for him to do. Like all the stuff with the Soul Stone, you see that this is not easy for him and that it weighs on him even after. That's a bold writing thing to do, and that is an impressive piece of performance to be able to pull that off. Thanos did, in fact, manage to live up to that much hype, but he's not taking the top spot. The top spot, Ultimately, I have to give to the guy who is not only an amazing villain, a perfect counterpoint to the hero, a perfect emboldening of the thematic elements of the story in which he is being used, wonderfully just enjoyable watching him finally get defeated, perfectly hateable. I have to give it to David Tennant as Kilgrave in season 1 of Jessica Jones. I love the first season of Jessica Jones, unabashedly. If I could cut an episode and a half out of it because there's like a little flabbiness towards the end, it would be damn near perfect. And Kilgrave is one of the reasons for that. Because when you're doing a show that is ultimately about themes of abuse and survival of it, and of the power that an abuser can continue to hold over you even after, they've already done the worst of it that they're going to do to you. This is such a perfectly realized thematic villain. So often, the villains are just, how do we make something that is hard for the heroes to overcome? And Kilgrave is that. But he feeds into every theme that is going on to the show and enhances it all with this walking embodiment of entitlement. Everything is supposed to go his way. And if it doesn't go his way, well, he has a power that ensures that he's gonna make it go his way. Doesn't matter what anybody wants. And he is willing to kid himself into believing that when he tells someone something that they'll then say back to him, yes, that's what I want, that he'll take it as an affirmation. He'll take it as truth because that's what he wants to believe. He doesn't care about people's actual wants, actual needs. He only cares about his own, rationalizing his own, justifying his own, and making sure that it happens, and not caring about the damage ever. And it is a perfect way to handle a villain for what this story was about, what the character of Jessica Jones was being used to represent and be emblematic of. This is, in my mind, a perfectly realized villain, and I have to give Kilgrave the top spot on this. But that's my ranking. What is yours? Who do you think is the best villain in the MCU? Or do you want to do a full top 10? Whatever your thoughts are, and of course your thoughts on my top 10, all that stuff. Drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. There's all the stuff to do. You can support me on Patreon, like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, blah, blah, blah. Links in the description. And until next time, this council is adjourned.